Have you ever noticed how the first $10,000 feels like dragging a boulder up a mountain, but somehow the next 20 seem to arrive faster than you expected? It almost feels like the math shouldn't work that way. But it does. And what happens after 30,000 isn't just a surprise. It completely rewrites every assumption you've ever had about money, control, and freedom. Most people believe that wealth building is a simple linear journey. Save $1, move $1 closer to your goal, reach 10,000. That must mean you're 10% of the way to 100,000. On paper, it makes perfect sense. In real life, it couldn't be more wrong. This belief, the idea that saving money is a straight, predictable line, is exactly why most people remain trapped in the exhausting cycle of trading time for money. They grind, they hustle, they save a little, spend a little, and wonder why decades pass without any real financial traction. The truth is far more uncomfortable and far more fascinating. Wealth does not grow linearly. It accelerates, it bends, it transforms. And the moment it starts doing that is not at 100,000, not at 50,000, but at 30,000, long before most people expect anything meaningful to happen. My name is Mike Compound, and I spend an unreasonable amount of time studying money psychology, the invisible forces that push some people forward while holding others in place. If you're someone who genuinely wants to understand how real wealth building works, not the sugar-coated cliches, not the get rich if you're lucky fantasy, then buckle up. Because what happens after 30,000 will reshape how you view every dollar you earn from this moment on. Here's the twist almost nobody sees coming. The $30,000 mark isn't just another milestone on your savings journey. It's the moment when everything shifts. It's the point where you stop working for money, and money starts working for you. It's when safety transforms into structure, when protection evolves into leverage, and when your entire psychological relationship with wealth changes, whether you're ready for it or not. You might think 10,000 made you feel safe, 20,000 made you feel in control, but 30,000? That's when money stops behaving like something you store and starts acting like a system that moves, grows, and creates opportunities on its own. Most people have no idea this transformation is coming, and that's why they miss it. Let me paint you a picture of what most people's financial journey actually looks like. Not the fantasy version, but the real one lived quietly behind bank apps, sleepless nights, and small victories that feel bigger than they look. At $5,000, you're still waking up in the morning and checking your bank account with that tight, uneasy feeling in your stomach. You know the feeling, that small knot that forms right before you tap the balance, hoping nothing unexpected drained your account overnight. At this stage, every decision matters. A surprise car repair could wipe out half your savings. One missed paycheck could derail an entire month. You're not just managing money, you're managing survival. Every choice feels fragile, and every unexpected expense feels like it could tilt your entire life off balance. This is the phase psychologists call financial hypervigilance, a constant state of alertness that drains energy and confidence. But then something shifts when you hit $10,000. It isn't dramatic, it isn't loud, but it's real. The knot in your stomach loosens just a little. You start sleeping a little deeper. A sudden medical bill or a flat tire still hurts, but it no longer threatens your stability. You've built what financial experts call a basic emergency fund. For the first time in a long time, you can breathe. You can exhale without immediately worrying what inhale will cost you next. This is the milestone of safety. It doesn't mean you're thriving yet, but it means you're no longer drowning. Then comes $20,000. And this is where your entire mindset begins to shift without you even realizing it. You're no longer clinging to survival. You're stepping into strategy. Suddenly, the world feels less threatening and more negotiable. You can weather storms bigger than before. You start thinking things you never dared to consider at 5,000. What if I leave this toxic job? What if I invest for real this time? What if I actually have options? At 20,000, you start paying attention to retirement accounts, index funds, skill building, and income growth. You move from reaction to intention, from defense to the early stages of offense. And for many people, this is the first time they feel like they have their financial life somewhat under control. And yet, this is the trap. Because most people assume that the journey from 20 to 30,000 is just more of the same. A little more comfort, a little more breathing room, maybe slightly better sleep. But that assumption couldn't be further from the truth. What happens at 30,000 isn't a continuation, it's a transformation. Most people assume that going from 20,000 to 30,000 is just a slightly upgraded version of the same feelings. A bit more comfort, a bit more safety, maybe permission to treat yourself to something nicer. But that assumption is exactly why most people never understand how wealth really begins. Because at $30,000, something shifts, and it's not subtle, it's fundamental. 30,000 isn't 10 more than 20. It's the moment where the physics of money changes. It's where compound interest stops sounding like a chapter from a personal finance book and starts behaving like an actual force in your life. It's where you stop thinking emotionally about your money and start thinking strategically, not because someone told you to, but because your brain naturally begins to operate differently. 30,000 is the first moment where money stops being a fragile resource you protect and becomes a system that you can use. At this point, something almost magical happens in your mind. You stop seeing dollars as objects you hoard. You start seeing them as tools. Tools that can multiply. Tools that can buy time. Tools that can open doors you didn't even know existed. Every dollar you have suddenly adopts a new identity. Some dollars become soldiers, standing guard in your emergency fund, protecting you from unexpected storms. Some dollars become workers, going into investments, returning with more dollars over time. Some dollars become scouts, exploring new opportunities, testing small risks, gathering information, making you smarter. This isn't feel-good psychology. There's real science behind it. Behavioral economists call this the shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. When you have $30,000, your brain no longer operates from fear. It operates from possibility, from choice, from control. Here's a perfect example of how your thinking changes. When you had $5,000, spending $100 felt like a serious decision. At $20,000, you still paused before spending it. But at $30,000, your question changes from, "Can I afford this?" to, "Is this the best use of this money?" That shift, that subtle reframing, is the difference between people who accumulate money and people who build wealth. And here's the part almost everyone misses. 30,000 is not about having more money to spend. It's about having more leverage. A new lens, a new level of clarity, a new ability to make choices from strength instead of survival. Most people don't even notice when they cross this threshold, but their life starts moving differently, faster, smoother, smarter. Here's where things start to get truly interesting. Because once you cross the $30,000 threshold, you don't just behave differently with money, you think differently. Your brain, almost automatically, begins to operate in a new financial mode. Before this point, every dollar felt precious, fragile, something you must guard tightly. After 30,000, you begin treating money the way wealth builders do. Every dollar becomes an employee with a job, a role, and a responsibility. And that mental transformation changes everything. You stop buying things to feel better in the moment and start choosing things that make your future stronger. You begin evaluating purchases the way investors evaluate opportunities. Instead of asking, "Do I want this?" you catch yourself asking, "What does this purchase do for me long term?" That's a question you don't ask from scarcity. That's a question born from stability. But the shift doesn't end there. After 30,000, you stop managing money emotionally. You stop reacting to every unexpected expense as if it's a financial emergency. You stop making decisions out of worry, fear, or pressure. Instead, you start thinking in terms of systems. You care less about individual choices and more about the flow that moves your money automatically, consistently, and strategically. This is the point where you begin building recurring frameworks. Automatic transfers into investments, automated savings, recurring contributions to retirement accounts, structured budgeting that doesn't require constant discipline. It's less about willpower and more about architecture. Less about self-control and more about setting up pipelines that run in the background while you live your life. At 30,000, even small financial decisions transform. When your car breaks down, you're not spiraling, scrambling to borrow money, or swiping a credit card with dread. Instead, you weigh your options calmly. Repair, upgrade, replace. Which choice creates the best long-term gain? You begin thinking like an investor, even in everyday life. This mental clarity also affects how you view opportunities. You can now consider investments that were previously out of reach or too risky when your savings were thin. You can diversify. You can take calculated risks. You can invest in skills or education without fearing financial ruin. You can even start exploring business ideas, knowing a failure won't destroy you, which ironically increases your odds of success. And that brings us to one of the most powerful yet underrated shifts that 30,000 unlocks, the ability to play offense. Before this milestone, most people live their entire financial life on defense, protecting what little they have. But with 30,000, your mindset flips. Suddenly, you're not just protecting your money, you're using it to create more. This is where the real magic begins. Not the inspirational kind you see on motivational posters, but the practical, mathematical kind that quietly alters the entire trajectory of your financial life. Because at $30,000, you gain access to something most people never discover: the power of systems. Not goals, not discipline, not motivation. Systems. Before this milestone, saving money feels like pushing a heavy cart uphill. Every dollar requires conscious effort. Every good habit requires willpower. Every investment decision feels heavy, risky, and important. But after 30,000, you suddenly have enough momentum for money to start moving without friction. You finally have enough capital for structure to matter more than struggle. This is the moment when the freedom flywheel kicks in. A self-reinforcing loop that accelerates your progress faster than any spreadsheet can explain. Here's how it works. You now have enough money to buy time. Your saved time gives you space to learn new skills. Those new skills allow you to earn more money. That extra money lets you buy even more time, which leads to better skills, better opportunities, better choices. The flywheel keeps turning, picking up speed with every rotation. What once felt impossible now feels inevitable. But here's the catch. Most people stop before the flywheel ever starts. They reach 20,000, maybe 25, and think they've made it. They relax. They get comfortable. They stop pushing, stop learning, stop experimenting. Comfort becomes the quiet killer of their potential. They plateau right before the fun begins. At 30,000, you also gain access to meaningful diversification. You can put real amounts into retirement accounts that compound for decades. You can take real positions in index funds. You can mix assets in a way that actually balances risk and reward instead of just sprinkling pennies across random ideas. You can invest in yourself through courses, certifications, or training that dramatically increase your earning potential. Options that were too risky when your savings were thin. Most importantly, you stop thinking in terms of goals like save more or earn more. You begin thinking in terms of systems, automatic behaviors that operate whether you're paying attention or not. You automate savings, automate investments, automate learning, automate your entire wealth-building process. And once you do that, the flywheel stops depending on your daily motivation. It spins on its own. This is what separates people who accumulate money from people who build wealth. One person saves manually, the other builds a machine. There's a hidden superpower that nobody talks about, and it only appears once you hit that $30,000 mark. It's not compound interest. It's not diversification. It's not even investing. It's something far more subtle and far more valuable. It's the ability to say no. Think back to your last job interview. If your bank account only had $300 in it, you probably would have accepted whatever salary they offered. Maybe you even thanked them for the opportunity, even if the pay was terrible or the work environment felt wrong. But when you're sitting on $30,000, something shifts. Your questions change. Your posture changes. The entire energy of the negotiation changes. Instead of thinking, I just need a job, you start asking, is this the right place for me? What does growth look like here? Do I even want to spend 40 hours a week with these people? This is what I call no power. And it is one of the most financially transformative psychological shifts you will ever experience. Desperation is expensive. Confidence is profitable. And with $30,000, you finally stop making decisions from a place of fear. You stop saying yes to everything just because you feel you have no choice. You begin declining opportunities that drain your energy, rejecting toxic bosses, turning down side hustles that pay well but destroy your time, and walking away from situations that only look good on paper. And here's the beautiful twist. When you get better at saying no to the wrong things, you automatically get better at saying yes to the right things. The right jobs, the right opportunities, the right investments, the right relationships. Having no power is not about rejecting life. It's about filtering life with clarity instead of panic. This shift doesn't just change how you work, it changes your personal relationships too. Suddenly, some friends start asking you for money advice. Others feel awkward about discussing their own finances around you. Some become inspired, some become insecure, some fade away, some get closer. Money won't change who you are, but it will reveal who everyone else is. But you don't need to flaunt your success, and you don't need to downplay it either. You earned this milestone. You built these habits. And whether people understand or not, you're now thinking strategically, not emotionally. After 30,000, your decisions stop being driven by survival and start being driven by long-term acceleration. You think in decades, not days. You make choices from strength, not pressure. And that's why the $30,000 shift becomes a turning point, not only in your finances, but in your identity. Here's the part almost everyone gets wrong. They think $30,000 is a finish line, a destination, a moment to relax because they finally feel secure. And that is exactly why most people get stuck. Not at 5,000, not at 10, not even at 20, but right after they hit 30. This is the silent killer of wealth building, the moment when comfort quietly replaces growth. I call it the plateau trap. At 30,000, life becomes stable enough that the chaos quiets down. Emergencies shrink. Financial fires become easier to put out. You breathe easier, sleep deeper, think clearer. But that comfort is a double-edged sword. Because for many people, the moment life becomes comfortable, they stop moving. They stop learning new skills. They stop investing aggressively. They stop experimenting. They stop taking calculated risks. They stop pushing themselves forward. They don't fall backward. They simply stop climbing. And stopping is deadly in wealth building because the entire engine that got you to 30,000 requires momentum. Losing that momentum is like turning off the engine halfway up a mountain. You may not roll backward immediately, but your climb is over. The wealth builders, the ones who go from 30,000 to 100,000, then to 200, then to 500,000, they understand something crucial. 30,000 isn't the summit, it's base camp. Think about Mount Everest. Base camp is the point where you finally have enough stability, enough structure, and enough preparation to legitimately attempt the climb. But it is absolutely not the top. It is the place where the real climb begins. That's exactly what $30,000 represents. At this stage, you stop thinking in terms of goals like save more or invest more. Goals are fragile. They rely on motivation. They fade when life gets busy. Systems, however, survive everything, and this is where you begin to shift from goal setting to system building. Instead of hoping to save money, you automate it. Instead of hoping to invest, you structure it. Instead of hoping opportunities appear, you use your leverage to create them. You build habits that don't collapse when you're tired. You build routines that don't disappear when you're stressed. You build rhythms that run even when your motivation doesn't. And most importantly, you keep learning. You keep upgrading your skills. You keep expanding your network. You keep looking for ways to increase your earning potential. Because the real power of 30,000 isn't the money. It's the proof that you can do something difficult consistently. That's why the people who break through this plateau don't feel lucky. They feel prepared. Here's the part nobody expects. Once you reach $30,000, your relationship with money doesn't just evolve. You evolve. You don't just feel more secure. You feel more capable, more strategic, more aware of how your choices today shape your freedom tomorrow. This milestone becomes a mirror that reflects a new version of yourself, the version who proved that discipline works, that consistency pays off, and that the long road is worth walking. Because at $30,000, something profound happens. Your confidence compounds faster than your net worth. Why? Because reaching this milestone requires doing the one thing that separates successful people from everyone else: delayed gratification on a meaningful scale. You've demonstrated that you can say no to short-term pleasure in exchange for long-term gain. You've shown that you can follow a plan even when it's boring, slow, or invisible to everyone else. You've proven that you can change your habits and stick with them long enough to see results. That kind of trust in yourself is rare and powerful. It's what psychologists call a positive feedback loop. Success builds confidence. Confidence builds better decisions. Better decisions create more success. More success reinforces your confidence. That loop becomes your engine, your advantage, your unfair head start in life. And once that momentum kicks in, it becomes almost impossible to stop. Because the same habits that got you to 30,000 are the exact same habits that will take you to 50, to 100, to 200, and eventually to financial independence, whatever that looks like for you. But there's one more truth. At this milestone, your biggest danger isn't losing money. Your biggest danger is starting to look wealthy instead of becoming wealthy. Your brain will whisper tempting ideas. You deserve a nicer car now. You should treat yourself. Look how hard you worked. You've earned a lifestyle upgrade. But here's what your brain won't tell you. Every dollar you use to look wealthy is a dollar that can't make you actually wealthy. Look at two people who reach 30,000. Sarah rushes to put 20,000 down on a luxury car. 5 years later, her car is worth 12,000 and she's stressed. Jake invests 20,000 into a diversified portfolio. 5 years later, it's worth 35,000 and he's calmer, freer, and ahead. Same starting point, completely different outcomes. Not because of luck, because of mindset. At the $30,000 mark, you stop valuing money for what it buys today and start valuing it for what it builds tomorrow. You start seeing every dollar as an employee. Some guard you, some grow for you, some explore opportunities for you. You stop optimizing for the lowest price and start optimizing for time, energy, and acceleration. You begin thinking in decades instead of days. So whether you're at 15,000, 25,000, or still climbing your way up from zero, understand this. The $30,000 transformation isn't about the money. It's about the identity you build on the way there. Once you cross that threshold, your world expands. Your options widen. Your choices strengthen. And your future becomes something you design, not something you fear. The moment money begins working for you is the moment everything changes.